You're listening to The Manning Report with your host, James David Manning. The news behind the headlines.
If you're listening, it doesn't matter whether you're with Trump or for Trump, against Trump, it really doesn't matter. There's no clarity anywhere. There's no paradigm by that. I mean, there is no example by which we can example this thing out, or we can tantamount it out. The whole collection of all the voices that you have heard with Woodward and Bernstein, from Nixon era to Bernstein today, and David Gergen and Sean Hannity, Tucker Carlson, Maggie Haberman, the Washington Post, the New York Times. I mean, if you just put all of those people who are out now, giving opinions or doing review or research, or even the poll takers about the last 3 years, and no one knows the outcome of the answer. And there are no clear winners. Why is that so? I think it's important that you begin to realize that nobody knows this, that we have stepped into a territory that is virgin and that has never been broached in the annals of human history. Some have gone back to the Roman Empire and they've looked at the Caesars, and they've looked at the fall of the Roman Empire. They've looked at the rise of the Visigoths. They've looked at the rise of the Ottoman Empire, and they've looked at its fall. They've gone and looked at even Genghis Khan in China. They've even been respectful enough to go back to the Bible and look at the days of Abraham, the days of Moses, the days of Joshua, the days of King Solomon, the rise and fall. They looked at King Ahab and Jezebel. They've looked at Babylon and Cyrus and Persia and Darius and the various Persias of Babylon. They've looked at the rise, and more immediately they looked at the rise of the Third Reich with Hitler and Germany, and they have not been able to make a consequential, if you will, paradigm comparison to what is absolutely going on, that we have stepped over a Rubicon, that we have stepped into a place that no man has ever gone before. And I sit daily, as I'm sure many of you do, watching the television or reading the news feeds, and it is just absolutely jitter, chatter without resolve. And now what we have noticed is that, and one of the components of this unprecedented, uncharted waters of which we have found ourselves in, is that, number one, is that we found it to be only a Western Japheth, white people's world phenomenon. That the rest of the world, whether you be in Africa or in China or in the Asian region, that they are not suffering this similar experience. This is only a Western world Japheth, if you will, by white people, as to what Japheth means in terms of a definition. So what we have now began to do is that we have to then discover that why is it that no one has an answer? All the brilliant scholars and Pulitzer Prize winners, and those like Woodward and Bernstein and Maggie Haberman, and those of the extraordinary time-tested New York Times and Washington Post, of CNN, of ABC, of NBC, and those from the universities, the Professor Lawrence Tribe, and all others from the esteemed universities, they all come and they all fizzle. They don't have an answer. They don't have an explanation. They don't have an estimation. And this perhaps can be put in a symbolic way as the most darkest time, but just over white people. This is the most darkest time, darkest days that America has ever faced. We can call it a constitutional crisis with respect to the political strengths of it, but it's deeper than that. But the very fact that there is no light, that Maggie Haberman or that called Lawrence Tribe, Professor Tribe, or Woodward and Bernstein and others, that they have no clear presentation. They have no light. They have no path. They have no direction. Means that darkness is like a people who are down in a cypress swamp at the heart of midnight. James Weldon Johnson, that America is now darker than 1,000 midnights, down in a cypress swamp. We're in darkness. And again, not to be repetitive, I've learned in my logic and debating school classes to make your point and move on. I argued with that in debating classes because it works if you're talking with people of a certain intellectual strength. You can make your point and move on. You don't have to restate it over and over again. But I just for one time further in this debate to state that just step back for just a moment. As you have sat before your television screens, you've watched the primaries, you've watched the general elections, you've watched the inauguration, you have watched the criminal investigation, you've watched the Mueller report, you've watched Paul Manafort go to jail, you've watched Mike Flynn not yet going to jail, but become state's evidence, if you will. You've watched Don Jr., and you've watched the various prosecutions. And now you've watched Attorney General Barr and the release of the Mueller report, and you've watched the obfuscation of it. Perhaps some of you have been industrious enough to actually read it and discover it. You've watched 800 federal prosecutors say that Tribulation Trump obstructed justice. Well, you didn't need them to say that. You may not be an attorney, but you could see the obstruction of justice from day one with the firing of James Comey. But yet there is no answer to anything. And now there is no perspective that perhaps the courts can settle the dispute between the executive and the legislative branch. There are no answers. That what I'm trying to paint a picture of here to you logically is that every day over the past 3 years, America has gone deeper and deeper into the abyss and deeper into darkness and further away from light. However, that's just one segment of the world. Not all of the world has gone that direction. That's only Japheth or white people or the Western world, which would include Europe and England or the Great Britain as well. But the rest of the world has not gone in that direction. You would be surprised to discover that China is doing just great. And North Korea, after Kim Jong-un and Kim Jong-sung, the founder of North Korea, who longed for the opportunity to be able to get a platform on the Americans on the world stage, but never got it. Now Kim Jong-un is getting it because the rise of Canaanite or Asian or Hamites are now rising, and a light is beginning to shine in the east as the west begins to sink, as the sun is setting in the west. The metaphor here could be very well that the sun has set on America, and now darkness is in her way, and the light is rising in the east. The metaphorical, actually hemispheric truth about our universal understanding. The sun rises in the east and sets in the west. And now that the sun has set on Western world, Western white people, Japheth society, it is rising in the east. On the Asian, it's rising in the east, on China, on North Korea, and on other parts, even Vietnam, other parts where Hamites and Canaanites are so found, and will later have a greater rising on India and Africa as well. And so I think it's very important that we come to terms with where we are, and to understand this segment where we have just expressed is that so that you can understand that this is not happening to black people. What's happening in America is not happening to black or brown people. They are the objects of it, but they're not in darkness. Black and brown people, or Hamite or Canaanite people, are not in darkness. And Tribulation Trump has been able to expose the Jews of the synagogue of Satan, and so they are in darkness, but not all Jews are in darkness. There are a number of them that abhor Tribulation Trump, and they've tried to warn the other Jews about Netanyahu and Tribulation Trump and don't follow him down into the path of darkness or into the pit. But this darkness that has come, now here, this confusion that's happening in our world today is not happening to black people because the sun set on us years ago. Hamites, Canaanites. The sun set on us years ago. Please understand, the sun is rising on the Hamites and Canaanite people as it is setting on the white or Japheth people. And who can stop the sun? Who can stop the rain, sunshine and rain? Who can stop the rain? But who can stop the sun from rising? Who can stop the sun from rising on the Canaanite and Hamite people, or black and brown, or African American, or Negro, or colored, or whatever you want to refer to them as? Who can stop the sun from rising on them? And who can stop the sun from setting? So when you look at Lindsey Graham or Mitch McConnell, or you look at all of them and you hear what they're saying, you hear their approach to humanity, they're in darkness and the sun has set. And I think we need to understand that. But it has not changed. On these white or Japheth, I made the commitment at Gettysburg that I would use the term Japheth and Hamite and Canaanite and Shemite. But little did I know that my audience would expand far beyond the Gettysburg group. And so I have to continue to refer to them as what has been the traditional racial identity of white people or black people. And so we have continued to use both terms until all can find an equilibrium of what that all means. So I think it's important so we understand that is what, nobody knows. There are no prognosticators, at least not in your purview, of where we're going to go. Will Trump win? Will he not win? Will the Congress succeed or will they not succeed? Will the subpoena succeed? Will they not succeed? Will the Republicans stop supporting Trump? Will they not stop supporting Trump? Will the Democrats and liberals prevail? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. And anybody who thinks that they know, at least in that crowd of people, whether it be Woodward and Bernstein, Lawrence Tribe, or whether it be Maggie Haberman or some others, that they think that they've got some grip on historically. They really don't know. And they're at their wits' end of not knowing. But God knows. God knows. God knows all things. He's omniscient. He knows all sciences. He knows all logics. He knows all things. He knows all poets. He knows all philosophy. God knows. He's omniscient. God knows. Omniscient. God knows. God knows all sciences. God knows all places. And what God is saying is that man is now, or the white man is now in darkness in a world that he has created for himself. This is a bit of a news blog we do looking at spiritual wickedness in high places for the most part, making some observations about it and giving people a biblical foundation to the way of interpreting rather than have Sean Hannity or Laura Ingraham or Janine Pirro or Anderson Cooper or Rachel Maddow or Don Lemon, Rush Limbaugh interpret what's going on in the world. You come to me and I'll tell you based on what the Word of God says. They'll just give you their worldly, sinful view. But the Manning Report will tell you what God has said, whether to say yea or nay, whether to go or to stay. You'll be led by the word of Almighty God. Come to the Manning Report on a daily basis to interpret the spiritual wickedness in high places, because there's plenty of it that's going on. And so I'm the Lord's servant, James David Righteous Rebel Manning, and I'm here to serve you with news and information.